Hello and welcome to the final chapter of my TearRing Saga Champions of Utena low turn count playthrough, in which we intend to put a sword through Gwen Chaos, rescue the princesses, and save the day. Of course, it is going to be in no way as easy as it sounds. Unlike some Fire Emblem Final maps, this one is quite complex and in-depth, and there's quite a lot of events during it. So, to start with, we are not able to enter the area where Gwen Chaos is conducting his ritual at all, not even if we were to use the Warp Staff or skill. So, instead, our strategic focus is to arrange our units in such a way that once the final boss does appear, we can swoop in and defeat them immediately. Since this is the final map, our two armies have once again reunited, and we have separate preparations areas for each, and that means that we only get to bring a very few units from each army. This method of dividing the armies up on the final map, I think, makes a lot more sense than a similar situation in Fire Emblem Echoes, where you could deploy your units and then freely swap them around between each army's deployment. That always struck me as kind of silly. So, if you look at the map, you will see that both of our armies are stuck behind closed doors. And the trick with these doors is that they cannot be opened from the side that our armies are on, even by lock touch units. So we are going to be relying on warping, including giving Sierra a door key, in order to get these doors open as soon as possible, because we only have 3 turns to reach the positions that we need to be for the final boss's appearance on turn 4. These locked doors are a similar conceit to the final map of Thracia 776, but unlike in that game, this game provides a few fail-safes in case you don't have a door key or a warper, although obviously I'm not going to need those. As far as the units we're deploying go, we are not deploying all that many mounted units, which you may think is logical, but actually, mounted units can mount up on the bulk of this map. They're only forced to dismount in the starting areas. Anyway, we are now beginning the chapter. Gwen Chaos has murdered his first victim, and our strategy is in motion as we use the Warp Staff to warp Holmes just to the other side of the door. It's absolutely critical to the strategy that we get all of these doors open as soon as possible. And I do the warps in this order, with Holmes first before Junie, so that Plum gets to move onto the door tile, because she has the lowest move of all the units that I need to rush across the map, and so she needs this head start in order to make it where she needs to go. So she dances Renee so that we can warp Junie over towards Runan's group. And unfortunately, because we are having Renee use the Warp Staff twice, she does not have time on this turn to use the Exercise Staff. And that means that we are going to have to deal with the Draco zombies that are scattered around this map. In order to ensure a few people's survival, we are taking certain measures. Both Runan and Holmes are going to be equipping their Astras in order to halve the damage from breath attacks. And meanwhile, Raffin is going to take the main gauche that he pulled out of the convoy in preps and trade it to Junie to maximize her void against the fierce breath. Runan is also going to be using the Varanastra on his action in order to kill one of the Draco zombies, and we can now see how much damage he deals when he doesn't have the dragon skin blocking said sword's effective damage against monsters. It just absolutely obliterates the Draco zombie in a single hit. We now need to open a third door, and because Renee doesn't have any actions left, we have to have Sierra warp on over there and use a door key to get it open. This frees the new unit hiding behind there. His name is Sennet, and we have seen him several times during the game as a green unit, but now at last he is on our side. Sennet comes holding the third of the Holy Swords, the Vayavyastra, and he has pretty decent stats. There is a fairly well-known strategy with him that involves saving a wing potion and giving it to him on this turn. and that gives him enough speed to double the final boss with his Holy Sword, which is very useful because Sennet is pretty strong, and the Vayavyastra has the highest might out of all of the Holy Swords. But I am not doing this because I don't have any wing potions spare. And, more importantly, Sennet's movement is only 5, and that means that he has a very strict movement pattern in order to get where he needs to go by the end of turn 3. And because of that, he is not going to have an action free when he gets next to the final boss. So he's never going to see combat against the final boss, and so there's no point in wasting a stat booster on him. All in all, Sennet is a pretty decent unit. He does have Wrath as well, so getting him chipped down on the way to the final boss can help. So now I had better talk about the witch who teleported over and nearly killed Shigen in one hit. This is Carla, and according to the plot, she is in fact Shigen's mother. But according to me, in terms of the strategy of this map, she is a right pain in the ass. Carla has a shield called the Dragon Skewt, which halves incoming damage, similar to Vega's Shram, or more recently in the Fire Emblem series, the Dragon Skin skill from Fire Emblem Awakening and Fates. That makes her extremely difficult to kill, even when she warps within range of your units. And her high range from Meteor means that you're not likely to be counterattacking her on enemy phase. So having her floating around is a real pain, and I'm quite glad that she put herself in the perfect position to be targeted. Renee is now able to use the exercise staff, and though on her first attempt she is only able to eliminate 2 of the enemy Draco zombies, fortunately, she does not have to warp anyone this turn, so I can simply dance her and have her use exercise again to finish off the remaining Draco zombies. And that gets rid of another pretty annoying part of this map. Yoda is now going to move in to fight Carla, and he is able to one-round KO her if he manages to get a double critical hit with the Lukud. And thankfully he does just that, killing Carla and taking out her annoying RNG from the remainder of this clear. So I'm very grateful to Yoda and Carla's random AI there. So let's move on from that. On this turn, because I moved Yoda in to kill Carla, Holmes is actually going to miss out on using his full movement. But he actually has really high move here, thanks to Frontiersman and his promotion, and so missing one tile here doesn't actually cost me anything. He's going to be able to get where he needs to be in plenty of time. Sierra is now going to warp over to give Holmes' group a hand, because there is a nasty sorcerer sitting there that none of my units can reach. And so we want Sierra to take that kill, so that we don't have to worry about what happens if that sorcerer gets to attack Renee or Plum, or worse yet, Holmes. You may have noticed that I had Narcus transform into Vega on turn 1, and that was actually a misclick. Thankfully, it wasn't a bad enough mistake to cause a reset, because he does have turn 2 to untransform before he needs to transform into who else but Sierra on turn 3. Apologies if there were any Vega fans who thought I was doing something interesting there. Anyway, we now need to deal with the enemies in the right-hand side that are closing in on Runan and Sennet. Sennet is getting the benefit of the physics staff this turn, while Runan, who took a major beating on the last enemy phase, is going to be dipping into the convoy and pulling out an elixir. He no longer needs a magic shield from here on out, so he can ditch that. And then, in order to make sure that Vega survives, he is going to need to be traded a miracle charm. There's no one really near him, so Gerxel is going to trade his miracle charm over to Lyria, who is then going to move to trade that to Vega before she does her sing for this turn. I chose Lyria to do this delivery so that her sing is able to reach as many combat units as possible, just in case I got a lucky refresh there. Lyria is in fact level 15 at this point, and that means that she now has the full 4-range sing, which comes very, very late in this run, and so it's not going to be particularly useful overall. So as we've been working our way through this strategy, Gwenkalis has been gradually murdering his way through the shamans up on the altar. But while he's been doing that, we have eliminated pretty much all resistance between us and him. Pretty much the only really worrying enemy here is the sorcerer with Kishar's Wrath, which he is unleashing on us this turn. But obviously, thanks to the Miracle Charm trading, no one is at risk of death there. And there are also a handful of reinforcement enemies who are going to be a slight concern before the map is over. So it's now turn 3, meaning Gwenkalis just finished murdering Enter, and we are approaching the final stage of this map, wherein a staircase is going to appear on the southern part of the altar that Gwenkalis is standing on. And we need to get all of our Holy Sword users over to the bottom of that staircase before the end of this turn. Runan has already managed to move into the position that he needs to reach, which is right at the base of the stairway. Meanwhile, Holmes is going to be moving in next to him, which is close enough for him, because Holmes isn't going to have to walk up there. Instead, he is going to be warped on the next turn. Now, I did make another slight mistake here, because I intended to have Lan's Mirror traded from Runan over to Holmes here, but instead I hit the talk command, which ended Holmes' turn. It's reasonably important for Holmes to have Lan's Mirror for reliability purposes, but obviously it's not a deal breaker here. Sierra is now going to warp over to Narcus, and he is going to transform into her for the final turn. And after that, we need to talk some more about Sennet, because as mentioned, his movement is pretty garbage, and that means that he is going to be needing some sing support here. If you pay careful attention to the next turn, you will see that it is quite possible to have Sennet sung either on this turn or on the next turn, with the strategy still working either way. And that might add a little bit of reliability to the clear overall, if I was to not save at the start of the next turn and reset back to here if he doesn't get a sing proc on either turn. But I decided that it was in my best interest to rig the sing proc here, because that allows me to potentially get a lucky sing proc on the next turn in order to add reliability to the final boss kill. To be completely honest, the idea of Sing adding reliability to a strategy is slightly ridiculous, but that is the thought process that I went through when planning this out. Before we get to the Sing proc, I actually have Rishal take the Sylphid Tome off Sierra, and that is going to be traded to Narcus next turn, because Narcus isn't quite strong enough with Elfire to do what he needs to do there. And then we have Lyria use her Sing, and I actually get very lucky here, because I get a double Sing proc on both Runan and Sennet, and that allows me to fix my mistake from earlier and trade Lan's Mirror over to Holmes here. Now, I mentioned the reinforcements in the lower right area before, and the hilarious thing here is that they don't even bother attacking Raffen, even though they have very strong Devil Lances. And I think that just goes to show just how powerful Raffen is at this point in the game. Anyway, come the end of this enemy phase, we get one final cutscene, in which Tia and Richard arrive, and then Tia has a quick duel with Gwenkalis. But unfortunately for us, this is not enough to stop the ritual, as Chaos is able to use the small amount of blood he got from damaging Tear in order to complete it and summon the final boss, the Black Dragon, Gerxel. Gerxel is a pretty tough boss, and in order to defeat him, we need to surround him with all 4 of the Holy Sword wielders before we reduce him to 0 HP, because otherwise he will simply shrug off the blows and revive with full HP, which I really do not want to have to deal with. He also summons a huge cloud of moguls around himself, and so in order to achieve the formation with the 4 holy swords that we need, we are going to have to clear out those moguls using our 3 warp skill users. And I do mean 3, because we just picked up a 3rd one. Alfred is a sage. He's just appeared in the northern cell, and he has the warp skill as a personal skill. Additionally, he comes with an area of effect tome called the Tornado Tome, which targets enemies in a plus shape, and we are going to be having him target Gerxel with that in order to kill the 4 moguls that are currently occupying the spaces where the 4 Holy Sword wielders need to go. Incidentally, Alfred is the final failsafe, as he is able to warp around and get the door key drops from some of the enemies to let our units out into the main part of the map. We also recruited Tear on this turn, but the sum total of her utility is being a Holy Sword wielder. So, the first thing we need to do to finish off this final boss is have Sierra warp in to kill one of the moguls. This makes space for Alfred to come in and follow up with the Tornado Tome, because unfortunately the Tornado Tome only has 2 range, so we need to open that space for him to attack from first. So this opens our way to Gerxel, and we'll talk about him for a bit because he's kind of scary. His attack, Shadow Flame, has 2 to 3 range, so he can hit Tear wherever she is on this platform. And he also has, in addition to the standard dragon skin, a dragon scute, so all damage against him is going to be halved. The first of our Astra wielders who is going to face Gerxel is Runan, who is standing exactly 1 full move away from Gerxel. Between him and Sennet, he's the only one who can actually walk far enough to reach this position from where he is. And because Runan is quite weak, a couple of things happen. Firstly, his accuracy is completely garbage, and that is why we needed to warp Holmes up above Gerxel before moving Runan in. Because this means that we get Holmes' support for Runan, plus the Charisma skill and Lan's Mirror boosts to maximize Runan's accuracy. Additionally, it is completely impossible for Runan to 1-round KO Gerxel accidentally, even if he was to get an Adept and a double crit, which is a very good thing because Tear and Sennet cannot possibly be in position yet. Speaking of Sennet, we are now dancing Renee in order to warp him into position next to Gerxel. One reliability boost that Runan is not able to take advantage of is the fact that the dead shamans actually continue to give their support bonuses even though they are dead. But Runan is unfortunately not within 3 range of Enter here, so he is not benefiting from that at all, although Holmes and Sennet both would be able to. The final piece of the puzzle is clearing the way for Tear to approach Gerxel. And we do this by having Narcus warp over and use Sylphid to kill one of the moguls that is in her way. I could have had Holmes do this, but I prefer to keep Holmes' action available, because Tear relies on her proc skills or critical hits in order to deal significant damage to Gerxel. And having Holmes' action means that he can step in if necessary in order to make the boss kill substantially more reliable. But Tear gets first dibs because she was the only one of the 4 Holy Sword wielders who was not in position, and she is not holding back. She is pulling off a double critical hit in order to get revenge for Richard and destroy Gerxel once and for all. And that is the final map of TearRing Saga completed in 4 turns. And you know, right now I kind of wish that TearRing Saga had a ranking system similar to Thracia 776's one, because I have a feeling that I just completed a SSS rank playthrough. We now have a fairly long, unskippable cutscene, so I would like to move on to answering some viewer questions about the run. Aggro Incarnate asks, do you have a particular favorite clear of the run? And I'm going to cheat a little bit because there are actually 2 clears that I particularly like, and the first of those is Chapter 11. When I first LTC'd this game, I completed that map in 11 turns without the assistance of the save staff, and I knew at the time that it was possible for Junie to reach the chest 1 turn earlier than that. But I figured it was near enough impossible for her to survive through the map and get through the narrow, easily blocked corridors, so I let it go. So in this run, it was very satisfying to use the power of the save staff to shave off that 1 extra turn. And the other clear is, of course, Chapter 36, fighting Rakis instead of waiting out the turn count. Because watching one of the most durable bosses in the entire game go down like that was immensely satisfying once it was all pieced together into a single video. Next is Lolo Sintonia, who asked several questions, the first group of which can be summed up as, if you were to redo this run, what improvements would you like to make to it? And to start with, if I was to redo this run, my target would be to get below 200 turns, because that's a nice significant number to be able to brag about. Lolo does mention reliability as a factor in some of these turn clears, so I would like to start by addressing that. My standards for reliability in this game are desperately low because of the save staff, but there are still some lines that I cannot cross due to being simply too rare individual events or places where I can't use the save staff, like during an enemy phase. So I believe double sing procs are pretty borderline, although I have seen a few during this run, so I might decide to allow them, and triple sing procs are just completely out of the question, even though it would be theoretically possible to save a turn in Chapter 16 with a triple sing proc, according to Aggro Incarnate. It's also pretty difficult to rig things like multiple low percent crits going off during an enemy phase, or multiple low percent growths going off in the same, so those are probably out too. But beyond that, pretty much anything that you can rig on player phase is in the picture here. With that said, let's talk about the first major improvement that I could make, which is using Lyria a bit more effectively. In this run, I didn't really get the power that you can wield by having Lyria get danced by Plum to extend the movement range of your refresher. So there are plenty of places that could improve the run in, and I've pointed out a few of them. Part of the reason why I didn't look too hard for more Lyria refresh strategies during this run is the limitations on the save staff. At the start of this run, I had no idea that I would end up hammerning it, so I thought that I had 18 uses to cover the entire time from Chapter 2 all the way through to Chapter 37, where I expected to pick up the 3rd save staff. I also expected to have to rig each of Raphael's required stat gains separately, rather than managing to get them in a single level sometimes, as I did in the final run. So I had 6 uses of the save staff earmarked for that purpose, which meant I couldn't use them for Lyria Sings previously. Having done this run, I am much more aware of the resources that I have available to me, so I would be much freer to spam the save staff earlier on in the game. Tying into this is the recruitment choices in Welt near the start of the game. The first one in Verge, I would 100% want to take Naron from, because that would allow him to be trained during the early game, where I wasn't really giving all that much experience to specifically necessary units, other than keeping Raffin up to scratch. So having Naron take that experience, rather than trying to train him during Holmes's route, would be extremely effective in terms of experience distribution. But that leaves the question of who to pick second as an open question. I considered using Lionel and rigging his movement growth, but having examined the route a bit more, I don't think that movement growths actually save any turns outright, and so I think I would probably pick Lee second, inverting my choices in this run. And that would mean I could give him a Master Potion to have access to a Himern user during Holmes's first route split. And that means I would have plenty of save staff uses for anything I would want to do during that time. Lyria could also more effectively be used by sending her with Runen at the second reunion, and possibly also at the third reunion. I believe that in my no Darkron use context, Plum actually saves exactly the same amount of turns no matter which route you send her in at the third reunion. But I would like to investigate these strategies for sending them both together in the final reunion, just to get familiar with them. A couple of other reunion improvements that I would like to implement are sending Rebecca with Runen for the third reunion, because that would allow me to physic Raphael after the first flurry in chapter 36, guaranteeing his survival against Rakus in the second one. And also keeping note of Holmes's benchmarks to determine whether I need to send the Brave Bow with him for chapter 38. I considered sending Naron with Runen and Zieg with Holmes at the first reunion, but I think that Naron's increased movement is more important on Holmes's route, and Zieg's Nihil makes him more reliable against Barbarossa, so I actually think I would keep them as they were in this run. And Lolo specifically asked about Cranion, so I will address that. Would I want to try and kill Cranion in an improved run? The answer, surprisingly, is yes, because I figure that if I can find a way to train Alicia without costing any more than the turns that I save by killing Cranion, I then have an Alicia who is prepared to help 4-turn chapter 37. So I would very much like to investigate the possibility of that happening. And besides that, killing multiple dragons in a single LTC run is just a big style point that I would love to have as a feather in my cap. Obviously, it would be difficult to train Alicia up, because in such a run I would do chapter 11 late, after chapter 15. But I think it might still be possible without costing more turns than it saves. And then there's Lolo's final question: do I have any future plans, LTC or otherwise? And I'll start with the LTC question. I have no plans for doing any future LTC runs, especially not on YouTube, because I am not a natural LTCer, and TearRing Saga just had a number of factors that combined to make it attractive to me personally. I've mentioned before that I find this game extremely accessible to LTC, in part because of the save stuff, but also because there are so few benchmarks to keep in mind, as defensive benchmarks are essentially negated by the existence of miracle charms. Additionally, I'm not aware of any LTC runs of this game with full recruitment and Lyria Sing, so that was something of a novelty factor for me. And lastly, I just really, really love this game, and so playing it in a special way just made me happy, in a way that I don't think any other Fire Emblem game is going to match up to. I do have vague plans to maybe do single chapter LTC videos to show some of the clears that I didn't do in this run in future, but that's very tentative at this point. As far as other potential projects go, I do actually have some footage recorded for a video about the NES Fire Emblem games. One of my big obsessions is knowing how Fire Emblem game mechanics really work on a deep level, and to that end I was doing some empirical investigation into certain aspects of the NESFE combat and RNG calculations. And that investigation actually yielded at least one particularly surprising result, which would require some decent evidence in order for me to not get laughed out of the room if I tried to tell people about it. So I have some footage recorded, and I'm going to try and edit that into something that demonstrates my thesis adequately in the near future. There's also a set of rules that I drew up for an Iron Man challenge in Fire Emblem Heroes, which I did record a run of as a proof of concept some time ago. Although, to be completely honest, I'm not sure there's all that much overlap in audience between this game and Fire Emblem Heroes, so we'll see about that one. Alright, now before we get into the credits, there are a couple of people who I feel the need to acknowledge because they were huge inspirations to me, and this run would not exist without them. And the first of those is the legendary Don151, who was the first Fire Emblem YouTuber I ever watched, and his videos demonstrated to me how elegant a well-executed low turn count strategy could be. I feel like you can probably see a lot of influence from Don's work in this series. Second, I would like to acknowledge Mecha, because he recently played through this game on his channel, and watching him do that led me to take another look at quite a few of the maps in this game. And in particular, the final chapter was the one that I revised first compared to my previous run of this game, and it's because of watching Mecha's video and seeing how a 4-turn would be put together. And last, but certainly not least, there's Aggro Incarnate, who was extremely kind on my Reddit post about my previous attempt at low turn counting this game, and he offered many suggestions that I adopted for this run. And he has continued to show up in the comments offering his insights. Aggro seems to know pretty much everything about this game, so his insights are always highly appreciated. And now I am going to shut up, because the next part is possibly my favorite part of this entire game, and that is really saying something given how much I love it. So I'm going to be quiet and just let you listen.
Inside your pain and sorrow, never-ending dream still lives close to your wounded heart. Don't fall apart. Let me hold you in my arms so you can rest your soul, drifting through the winds of time, feeling warmth of sweet memories. You realize you're not all alone. Always, I'll be right here by your side. Don't be afraid. Open the door to your heart. You'll find all the dreams that you believe. shining bright. Together we'll make it true. Feeling your love, there's nothing to fear when you are near. Through every season love grows. You're a part of my life. Live with you this precious moment forever. I'm thinking of you always, feeling you inside. I hear only your gentle voice, your words of love. When I close my eyes, my heart can still feel your warm embrace. I'm not afraid. Every piece of my broken heart, shining bright, showing the way. I can see a new day, and with you, gonna find my tomorrow's dream. Feeling your love, bringing so much joy into my life. Through every season love grows. You make me feel alive. Share with you this precious moment forever. Feeling your love, bringing so much joy into my life. Through every season love grows. You make me feel alive. Share with you this precious moment forever.
Oh, hi, you're still here. Good to know. I guess there's just one more thanks that I have to give, and that is to my viewers, and particularly to anyone who has taken the time to leave a comment. I wish to express my deep gratitude to you, because I didn't expect that this little run of mine was going to get any more than 3 people total interested in it, and it's been a bit more than that actually. So once again, thank you for watching to the very end of this TearRing Saga Champions of Utena low turn count playthrough, completed in 214 turns. Until next time, farewell.